Proper meat packaging isn't just about preserving freshness. It's a canvas for creativity, a silent messenger, if you will, that whispers to our senses. Imagine a supermarket aisle transformed into an actual gallery. But beyond aesthetics, there's a deeper story. As we delve into the world of proper meat packaging, we'll uncover secrets, the need for the right packaging structure, and how, yes, plastic, the proper plastic layers can not only protect the product, but make it last longer for increased sales, of course, but also to get it into the mouths of those who need it most, the hungry. Brace yourselves. This isn't just about convenience. It's about our planet's future. Stay tuned.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Repackaging Revolution. I'm your host, David Marinac. Before we get to our guest, I'd like to share our podcast power statement or name of today's show, Fresh and Furious, the provocative art of food packaging. Now, our guest today is a bachelor's of science in animal and dairy sciences and a master in meat science from Auburn University. Go Tigers. We were introduced by our mutual friend and podcast guest as well, Dr. Jason Sawyer, PhD from Auburn in, ironically, meat science. Now, Tom has a unique perspective. He's been on both sides of the food industry, selling food products that require barrier packaging, as well as selling barrier packaging for food products, which we'll hear more about today. Tom Bonner with AC Legs, welcome to the show.
Thanks, David. Really appreciate this. Nice opportunity to sit down with you and discuss food packaging and what it means. You know, one of the things I always think about when we're talking about the food industry is, what can the individual consumer do? And the obvious question is, they have choices to make. And so that's the biggest thing, whether you're the guy designing a packaging line or the packaging that you're using, or you're the end consumer at home getting ready to prepare a meal for 3 hungry mouths, you have choices that you can make.
Yep, exactly. It's such an interesting business in the fact that, people, and I know you can relate to this too, Tom, is so many people think of packaging at the last minute. They spend all this time and money on the wonderful products or ingredients or, the grade of meat or beef or whatever it may be. And then they go, oh, crap, we forgot how we're going to package this. And then they wonder why it doesn't perform or it doesn't sell or people don't love it the way it was intended to be loved and all that kind of stuff. And frankly, that's a tough one because, packaging is critical. And that's why, I love doing this podcast because oftentimes I reach out to a lot of people like you in and through the space, and we all share the common, without packaging, we're screwed. It's a, yes, we have all these other tentacles, if you will, regarding, sustainable and biodegradable and compostable, all that jazz. But when it comes to being able to protect the product, get it on a store shelf, and like I try to tell our reps, we really and truly, packaging is the voice of your brand. It is really the way you get noticed or get your product picked up or consumed or whatever. And without that, you're really in trouble.
Yeah, food waste is still one of the main issues in the food industry now. And without packaging, or in the absence of good packaging, that just grows and gets worse. And so we have to keep that at the forefront of our mind when we begin to design or think about the next greatest packaging concept.
Yeah, and it's such and I know we're going to have fun today because we're going to bounce in and out of these different topics, but you brought up something before we even go there, but it's absolutely, I want to touch on that because the food waste, somebody had told me, and I believe them, it's close, that landfills are, food waste occupies 35% of the landfill capacity, meaning that's just food. That's not the packaging. That's not the, and that in and of itself is something that we're both passionate about is like, wait a minute, in a world where we see every day that people are going hungry, in a world where people are, and it's like, that shouldn't be happening. We've got, just throwing away food when it could be extended from an extended shelf life and get it in the hands of the right people that want to consume it or are hungry. I mean, my goodness. I mean, it's just a no-brainer. But yet here we are, we just keep throwing more and more and more stuff away. It just drives me nuts.
Yep. I agree. Yeah.
Well, you have this unique perspective, and let's just kind of go back. First of all, what I shared in the introduction, Tom, was that you're connected with Dr. Jason Sawyer with Auburn. Now, was he a professor of yours?
No, actually, Jason and I are about the same age. I met Jason when I was on assignment to Tyson Foods from Sealed Air
Yeah,
Corporation.
yep,
Sealed Air, Cryovac, their Cryovac division, they have been in the food packaging business for a long time.
long
And that
time.
was my first opportunity out of college for a career. And what a great opportunity that was for me. And the folks there at Cryovac, Sealed Air really got me started and pointed me in the right direction. I had opportunities to work in applications development and support, which is really where I learned the food industry. And then they had given me opportunities to work in sales in the national account area. And that only further broadened my scope to what was, how complex and how big this food industry really is and the impact that packaging has on it.
Yeah, and Sealed Air has been that, and I say this respectfully, that 900-pound gorilla, because they really do have embraced that kind of, that's their world. They understand the food packaging. They understand how to, whether it be pull a vacuum on it and protect it, or being able to kind of package something specifically for a store shelf or whatever. And it is amazing to me how many times all of us out here run into them, but they are somebody that, and when I say somebody, as a company, that really and truly are seem to be one step ahead of everybody else in this world, if you will. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, no doubt. They are very innovative. And,
Yep.
when I was there and working in the applications group, 20% of my time was supposed to be focused on developing new packaging concepts. And so when you think about that and when you're working on that, you're going to create some new ideas and some new things to grow the
100%.
business or change it. Yeah. So I don't know that we truly do that in the industry
Yep.
as much. Most of the
Yep.
time is spent on supporting our existing business, right? So
Yeah, sure.
that's a little bit different.
So let me see if I heard you right, because I would love to have been a fly on the wall for that too, Tom, because you guys are sitting around thinking, I don't mean sitting around literally, but you're literally saying to yourself, how do we come up with a unique or something different? Or is this like, did they give you I don't want to say talking points, but ideas and said, look, we want to extend the shelf life on this kind of material, or we want to come up with something that's better for sous vide or hot fill, or what was that? Give me some background on that, because that's fascinating that even a company that big, they are innovating like that, or at least attempting to innovate. I love hearing that. You would think
Yeah,
they'd be very set on their laurels. You know what I mean?
Sure. And I worked in a very mature product line on the
Yeah.
barrier bag side of the business, which is they're known for those.
Yeah.
And but they never stopped thinking about that product line and how to make it better. Whether we were working on better sealability,
Yeah.
better puncture abuse from the packaging
Yeah.
standpoint, better clarity, better barriers. All of that was always up for discussion. And we would have a concept that would come in, and we would sit down with the engineering group, and they would say, "Hey, let's think about this. How can we utilize this in this product line?" And then
Right.
we would go and test it out and present it to the marketing team. Is this something that we can take to market? And it just really challenged me to grow and understand. I actually had a
Sure.
boss who told me, he said, "Hey, you can't tell anybody no until you ask me first." And and that sounds a
love
little
it.
authoritative, right? Like, okay, wait, I can't make any decisions. That wasn't
Yeah,
the
right.
case. It was
Yeah.
that just drove me to find the answer. I didn't just give up easy and say, "Hey, I don't know what to do with it."
Yeah.
I had to search and really dig for it, and that really grew me.
See, that's very cool. And I love hearing that, because at the end of the day, that just, again, adds to the fact of how it comes from the top. I mean, your supervisor's kind of talking that way, which again, that leads down into your world of taking action and making sure that you kind of, do your part with this. And I just think that's very cool. I'm glad you mentioned that, because Sealed Air is one of those places that, and it's such an interesting dynamic. A lot of the people in my world, and I've sold everything from direct food products or cook and bag or high temperature films, but
Mhm.
the the big boys out there, the Sealed Airs of the world, those guys tend to work with the biggest of the big, the
That's
sausage
right.
manufacturers in Chicago that are pumping out or whatever. But they also have that medium-sized market too, Tom, where they actually have a very good footprint on, I guess you could say, the non-massive sausage companies. Does that make sense? I mean, it's just
Yeah.
interesting. I know that there's a lot of capital investment when somebody like Primo Sausage or somebody wants to be involved in that, and they work with that because there's machinery and testing or whatever. But I've also heard that Sealed Air is actually still very good on that, hey, not capital intensive. We're going to run this finished product or finished pouch where somebody doesn't necessarily have to invest big capital. I don't know. I'm just.
Yeah, absolutely. And their focus is those guys oftentimes turn into the big guys, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
if they can further their growth or help them, what a great place
Yep.
to start. And particularly testing out some new technology that maybe is not ready for mainstream. Hey, let's give
Right.
it a try
Yep.
and go. And we have a similar structure here at AC Leg.
Let's just kind of segue into the AC Leg and
Sure.
tell us some more about what it is that you do there. We may bounce back and forth, but
That's fine.
I love, because we are talking barrier packaging, but we are also talking about food in general. And I know AC Leg has a spices and seasonings. How does that all? Tell us a little bit of background about them, and then how you got there.
Yeah. So AC Leg is 100 years old as of last May. And they started out in Birmingham, Alabama, right downtown. And Mr. Legg was actually a butcher.
Wow.
And so everyone loved his sausage that he made and, just kept him busy making pork breakfast sausage.
Sure.
So there were a couple of businessmen there in Birmingham who approached him and said, hey, we think we could spin off and just sell the seasoning portion of what you've been working on. And they incorporated the business in 1923. Now, we know Mr. Legg and his father were in business in the 1800s. We can trace that back. But the seasoning portion of our business that we enjoy today started in 1923.
Huh.
So they incorporated, and Mr. Legg was probably out of the business by the 50s, I think. The current ownership of the business, the Purvis family, they've owned it since 1977 and is sole owned by the Purvis family. We're mainly focused, and I say this oftentimes tongue in cheek, we are very meat centric.
Yeah.
The majority of our business is in the processed meat side of the business. Well, we still make the original recipe, blend 10 sausage seasoning, and sell it today, just like we did back in the 1920s and 30s.
Incredible.
And we don't know this. This would be anecdotal at best, but we assume that the majority of the pork breakfast sausage flavors are somehow based off our blend 10 seasoning because it's so widespread.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So at that, if I was going to, because I again, in preparing for our podcast here, and I've looked that over. So do they kind of do specifically their own and then sell it out? Or is this a private label where somebody will come to them and say, hey, I've got this great idea for a pork rub or something like that? Tell me a little bit more about that into what they do now.
Sure. Yeah, so it's almost like two businesses. So we have what we call our signature line, and that would be where blend 10. And so the way that works is these are built house blends that you can buy. There's a minimum to meet, and if you can buy those, then we'll sell them to you. And they're ready to go. And there's anything from pork sausage to marinades to jerky seasoning, you name it, it's on there. And even some non-meat blends that are there for you to pick up. We have a bottle line too, a shaker line for seasoning.
I was just gonna, right.
Yeah, so that's the signature sign, the side of the business, the AC Leg. But then we have the custom blend, and that's where these guys come in and say, hey, we love blend 10, but we would like to have less sage or more red pepper.
Right.
And then we make a custom blend, and we call that our custom blending side of the business. And that's about 80% of what we actually do here at AC Leg, and that's what really drives the boat. Now,
interesting.
The signature line, I think of it as our advertisement. That everybody knows us for that.
Yeah,
but
it's your bread and butter.
In reality, our custom blending side of the business is really where we work.
So, and in a world, again, my background being packaging and I've been in this for 35 years. And again, the interesting thing to me, especially on the custom side, how do you distinguish or how does AC, I mean, you've got your bread and butter with your, your signature things that you've kind of, your blends that are out there. Is there something that you are actively, I mean, are you going to various trade shows? Is this something that's word of mouth? Is this something that, because I got to believe that you also, because I know I get hit up all the time, is there's a lot of mom and pops out there that are going to make or think they're going to make gazillions of dollars on their, and you know what? God bless them. For every one of them, we hope they make millions. But a lot of them are just at that, way polar opposite side of those guys that are established that are trying to kind of get this launched on on a Target store shelf or get this into mainstream. Are you guys known for doing small test runs, big massive runs? I mean, I would imagine there's other people out there that you try to distinguish yourself from versus the all we do is sell truckloads of this particular product.
Yeah, so maybe this might be a good time to kind of define what I do at AC Leg. And so my title is director of sales, but then also we've changed a few things in that technical service reports to me as well as
Yeah.
customer service. So anytime a customer is interacting with AC Leg, that falls under my umbrella. And so we have a whole technical team that they work with the customer and our sales team to supply the sample or develop the blend that's needed for their application. So
Wow.
if you call in and say, "Hey, I need a longer shelf life
Yeah.
for my smoked sausage," then one of the folks in our technical team would get on the phone with the customer and the salesperson, and they would work out the details and say, "Hey, I think I got this. I can get you an extra 3 to 5 days," or
Wow.
whatever that challenge may be.
Right. See, I love that because really, in essence, I mean, problem solving, and that's something I try to stress, not just with packaging in general, but you just described it right there. That's such an easier. Now we're touching on the Tom Bonner sales side of things. So many salespeople, I can just speak from the packaging side of things, Tom. They start out with we can be penny cheaper, or we can no. We got to find out where's the pain point or where's the opportunity. And just like you described, somebody will come to you saying, I need to get the extended shelf life on this. And taking it a step further, I'm sure it's like, okay, well, why? What are you currently using? Or what have you tried before? Or what has worked and hasn't worked? And that's interesting because that really, to me, is one of the things that's lacking in this packaging space is a lot of people just kind of hook on to, we want to extend the shelf life, but nobody really does the extra legwork to kind of find out, okay, is this a requirement that Costco is putting on you? Is this something that your competitor it has now? You're trying to, and back to so I'm flipping it back to the sales side of things because once we know that, then it's so much easier for us to dial in our alternatives or opportunities. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
And I just find it so
I agree.
often that salespeople just go like, well, is it cheaper? Like, no, dude, you're totally missing the boat. Totally.
Yeah, it's all about asking questions, right? And
Yeah.
listening and then trying to figure out because we can be a lot of things to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Whether I'm selling packaging or I'm selling seasoning. But what
Yeah.
is it that you need or you want? And oftentimes, and you've been there, David, I know you have,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
that you sit down with the customer and they don't know what they want.
Exactly.
And packaging is that way. Well, hey, we need something cheaper. Well,
Yep.
okay, what's cheaper?
Yeah.
Well, it's got to cost less per unit. Okay, but what if I can fix your cost by making a better package that doesn't have as many leakers or rejects?
There you
Isn't
go.
that even better? Because that's a whole different cost that nobody accounts for.
Do you find that, and it's you're so spot on, and oftentimes people they don't think that far out. I mean, I remember when I got into this business, Tom, back in the day. I don't want to sound like I'm back in the day, but when I would walk in off the street selling packaging, the buyers held all the cards. I mean, the buyers themselves were these established 30, 40-year reps, and these guys handled their entire, I don't care whether it was corrugated or the film and they, for example, the Hoover Company was one of my big customers way back when. And, they had like 30 or 40 different buyers. One guy handled paper, one guy handled, indirect, one guy handled steel, one guy handled plastic, one guy, and they held all the cards. But now, to your point, a lot of times people don't know what they want because a lot of times they don't know, frankly, anything about this. We've replaced the buyers with clerks oftentimes, and the clerks aren't a lot of times in my world, they don't even know what the packaging is called. Yeah, I need that, that bag that holds Uncle Ben's. That's what I need. Do you need a pouch? Do you need the film? Yeah, that. No, we got to back up. And that's one of those disconnects that's out there. But again, another huge opportunity for people that actually can comprehend that there's more behind the scenes.
Yeah, and now we're dealing with stakeholders that are more than just a buyer, right?
Yep.
There's the plant manager.
Yep.
There's the line operator or the supervisor that's in charge of that. And I think our industry has done a better job of holding those people accountable for packaging cost, packaging performance. And so now they're taking more of an active role in, hey, this works for me, this does not, and let's put a plan together. And so when I can get the plant manager or the ops guy or the line supervisor involved in that decision, things go a lot faster.
You just nailed it. And they've got skin in the game. I don't care whether it's skin in the game because their bonus is reflective or they actually have money or something in there. But yes, to that point, we've got to get beyond that kind of surface quote level clerk to that plant manager, to that foreman on the line that runs the equipment or runs the team that runs the equipment. That is the lesson really in a nutshell, is get beyond that person just kind of pushing paper and get to somebody that actually, can control the sale one way or the other.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, what kind of packaging, focusing on AC legs? I mean, I got to believe now, I know it's with a apostrophe S, but is it AC leg? Is that how you guys, because I know online it's an apostrophe S, but is it AC leg? Is that pretty much industry standard?
Yeah, AC leg with 2 Gs. Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely.
There you go. Okay, got it.
Yeah. Yeah, so the packaging that we have is not all that revolutionary for what we do. And so but we're actually quite diverse in what we have. So we have something as simple as a sewn bag. So it's a multi-wall craft paper bag with a poly liner, and that's still sewn. And we use that on a lot of our hand fill or manual lines. So it's really forgiving. You can pack variable weights in multiple size bags. So it works really good.
Right.
And we still do quite a bit of business in a corrugated box with a liner. Yeah. So that works for certain customers. But the biggest thing that we've grown is really our vertical form fill seal lines. And so that is a lot less labor. It's a whole lot faster. We go ahead and have the graphics or the instructions pre-printed on the film, or we can print on demand. And that's really where our growth is coming for us, because what we do a lot of unit pack. Let's say you're going to make 1,000 pounds of sausage. Yeah. Well, that may not be 50 pounds of seasoning. That we unit pack that. So, Jimmy on the line, all he has to do is open up 1 or 2 bags.
Thank you.
Apply it to there. So we're doing that back of the house work of weighing it out. And those vertical lines really help speed up that process and capturing the data that how to use the product, and then take out labor on our end as well.
Yeah, and I love that, because at the end of the day, there is a lot of sophistication in the roll stock and the form, fill, and seal, but once it's dialed in, it runs like a machine. That's right. And yes, the machinery is a big chunk of change, but once you dial that in, that really and truly can kind of speed through there and give you that flexibility, like you said, a print on demand, put some instructions on there, you can make it, And again, consumers will give you about 3 seconds of their time as they're walking down a store aisle. And even if it's an industrial consumer, they want to be able to see what this is. Oh, yeah, it's saffron and we need that, blah, blah, blah. But without that, it's interesting. Do you see that is the form fill more on the single serve, or you go on the form fill and the big guys too to replace the multi-wall bags?
It's actually both. It's for our retail, our signature line, where They're selling to the small individual processor.
Yeah.
Most of all of that signature line is formulated for making a 25-pound batch. So it has a
Yeah.
lot of graphics on there, it has our
Yeah.
logo. And if it was
Yeah.
on a storefront, then yeah, you would see it. All right.
Yeah.
But then let's say you want to put 30 pounds in there. We package that on a vertical film
Yeah.
too. And
Yeah.
it really is to help us speed it through our process. But
Yeah.
let's face it, making seasoning, blending, we can do that. Packaging becomes our bottleneck if we don't have
Yeah.
something that is speeding up the process on the packaging side. And that's really where it came from the vertical.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I kind of restarted. I've been doing a podcast for years, and I really restarted it over the last year or so. Is the I don't know, the misinformation and the hate towards plastic. And
Yep.
and again, I've often tried to tell and explain to people, it's like, look, until there's something else out there better. And yes, I'm all for, and I know you are, Tom, too. We're all for helping the environment. We want the best. We want our kids to grow up. But the demonizing of plastic and saying that this is the scourge of the world, when in reality, plastic is, right now, the best way to preserve and keep contents fresh or fresher for longer. And in actuality, it actually is the lowest cost alternative that's out there, not just on a per piece basis, but frankly, if people spent the time to look at, the shelf life versus the cost versus the amount of material that can be recycled and are used again, there's just all this stuff that's out there that drives me nuts. And I don't want to sound like a commercial for plastic. We sell all that stuff too. But oftentimes the demonizing of plastic isn't the plastic, it's the plastic waste that people see that's come from litter, that's on the side of the road or floating in the ocean. I guarantee you, Tom, nobody in the plastic industry ever said, gee, let's go throw a bunch of trash away in the ocean. And that's the thing that drives me crazy is litter is 85 to 90% intentional. So wait a minute. And it's not just, we don't just see plastic on the side of the road, or we see everything. So it's just one of those things. I digress on that. But I mean, plastic is one of those things that just, I don't know what else is out there, folks. Because at the end of the day, you can say all you want that you want, I'll pay more for something that's more sustainable. Well, it is sustainable. And especially if you're doing like you described, you most likely, you guys, before you got into the form, fill, and seal world, were, I don't know, shipping in buckets or pails or something rigid. That's a sustainable example of what you guys have done is you've reduced your packaging. You're now so much more flexible. So it's those kind of things that really and truly are one of the reasons why I really wanted to use this platform through the podcast just to educate people. Choose whatever you want. That's fine. But don't demonize something when you don't know the truth.
Yeah, no doubt. And yeah, you're exactly right. We were packing in drums, corrugated drums, and shipping those. And then, you know where those end up. They end up in the landfill. And I'm not saying corrugated is bad. It's just, it's a big bulky thing that you have to manage.
Right.
Versus, a thin layer of plastic, which most of the time can be recycled. And if you remember, I made a comment, it's about making choices, right?
Yep.
And so if you want to recycle something, you will find it and find an option. Now, no doubt the recycling industry has a ways to go, and municipalities have to get on board to make this work. And money has to be spent and to build the infrastructure, and particularly where we live in the South, right? We just don't have the infrastructure yet, but it's coming. And I think our consumers are going to start pushing us that way, and we should be ready for that. But we got to get there.
You got it. And it's so, we have the same thing. I'm in the Midwest in Cleveland, and it's no different in the fact that, and this drives me crazy too, is we don't have consistent rules and regulations throughout the board. I don't care whether it's at a state level or whether it's at a municipality level. I can go 5 minutes down the road and their recycle rules and regulations are completely different, Tom. And by the way, how they pay the recycling people is different, and, how sophisticated. So you mentioned a couple of things, which I think, and this is where I believe the industry needs to go, is the recycling. We improve the recycling and what we can do. You invest we make it worthwhile for investment dollars to be used on recycling, being able to convert and use products not just once and done, but to convert them into other items and different products or more packaging or whatever it is. That's where this thing kind of takes off, because that really, to this day, is the most inexpensive way to help the environment. Recycling is something that we can do. It's far less expensive than having some newfangled biodegradable material that people are just going to throw away anyhow. I mean, it's just like, or litter anyhow, as I should say. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
And recycling, if we dial it in, I mean, so much better off we'll be.
Yeah, and we can't put all of the responsibility on the municipalities and the recycling groups.
100%.
The packaging industry has some accountability as well.
Yep.
And so they need to partner with these groups. They need to seek them out. They need to have joint groups where they work and they decide what's best. And some of that goes on now, and you know about those.
Oh, yeah.
But we have the responsibility to make sure we're reducing our total use of plastic with our products.
Yeah. And I think you'll agree too. It's reducing packaging in general. Plastic is part of it, but reducing paper and whatever it may be, it's just reducing what goes to the landfill, reducing what kind of, because the problem that a lot of people don't understand is in the landfill world, the first thing they do, first of all, trash smells. So the first thing they do, I don't care whether it's corrugated boxes or filament paper or plastic bags, because trash smells, the first thing they're going to do is bury it, and when you bury it to reduce the stench, now it's not exposed to air or sunlight and nothing breaks down, paper, plastic, whatever. So that's also part of this education. That's also part of making sure that people are educated. I mean, look, let's face it. We start with our children when they're small and explain this is why, these canisters have 4 different options. Is it truly a trash? Is it something that's recyclable? And like on and on and on. And yes, without a doubt, it's coming. Without a doubt, the industry needs to, and I'll just speak from the U.S., we have to do a better job of incentivizing and I don't care whether there's I'm not looking for a deposit back to the old days of the glass bottles or whatever it is, but I'm just trying to think, how can we incentivize people or at least educate people that we only got one world, folks. We got to do something here. We can't just keep throwing it away like we always have. So it just, there's just so much opportunity there. And investment dollars, I know there's investment money. It just has to be something that's worthwhile that people are going to, companies or private equity is going to invest in.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think lightweighting packaging or truly diving into how we develop those and removing as much as we can, that is very much key to success of protecting this world for generations to come. We
100%.
have to do that. Yeah, I mean, and if you think about it, it is probably the easiest thing to do. Now, that doesn't mean it's hard or it doesn't mean it's easy, but it is probably one of the easiest low-hanging fruits that we can pick up on.
You got it.
And I'm sure you've seen this. I mean, I cooked a meal for the family the other day, and when I got done, I had all of this trash to throw away. And everywhere I go, I've started paying a whole lot more attention when I stay in hotels. And I see all these things, everything's individually packaged now because nobody wants to touch anything, right?
Yes.
And I'm like, you're going to put that in your body. So what's the harm in touching it? But, you go to a hotel and everything is all prepackaged and you got to throw it all away just to have a couple ounces of a meal. And I'm like, man, we've got so messed up in how we think about things.
Yeah. And again, I guarantee you it's changing. Not as fast as Tom Bonner and David Marinac wanted to change, but it's changing, and well, let's segue a little bit because you have the background with WinPack. One of the other places along your journey here is one of those companies in that barrier packaging world, like a Sealed Air, if you will.
Yep.
They're also a big 900-pound gorilla. And tell us a little bit about your background there. And then I want to share some unique things that you were part of back at your time with WinPack.
Yeah. So had a nice opportunity with WinPack, and they're a Canadian-based packaging company, very smart. They think about their infrastructure. They think about the things they make, and they do that very efficiently. And my time there was focused on sales management. So I was in charge of a region, the South region, and then ultimately ended up being the director of sales for protein. That really opened my eyes to a lot of this, the strategy that goes into developing these packages and what the industry is looking for.
Right.
And during my time there, this whole idea of plastic is bad really got heightened, and people began to make statements about plastic. And so we began to think about, okay, how do we be a better actor in the plastic portion
Right.
of the industry? How do we
Right.
make packaging that is lightweighted? How do we design it so that it functions very well with the least impact to the environment? What does the industry want? What does the industry need? Can we give them the same performance if we do these things? A lot of fun working with that group up there. Some really nice folks. They care so much about the industry, and
I've
they
heard
truly
that.
do focus on making great packaging work in this meat and food industry.
Everybody in that, from my buddy Mike at Cooper Farms, indirectly or directly. I don't know if you're Mike Whirling, another really good guy. Obviously, Dr. Jason talks very highly of WinPack as well. They really do go out of their way to make sure that they really are a premium brand that's out there in that world.
Yeah.
I love hearing that.
Yeah, they've really done a good job over the last 20 years of making high quality, low cost packaging, and they got the support to support it. I would put their products up against any of the top 3 or 4 suppliers, and really happy for what they've been able to do in the industry.
It's interesting. I oftentimes I've interviewed a few people from the plastic industry. There's a couple of think tanks, if you will, the plasticindustry.org and a few other places in DC. And I've often thought and said to these guys, why isn't a big player like a WinPack or Amcor or any of those other big players, why aren't they actively, maybe they are, but I'm not seeing them actively fighting back against this, and plastic is the scourge of the world. And I don't know. I mean, it's not to put you on the spot. I'm just talking out loud. I really wish that, and I know these, look, let's face it, each one of those companies, Tom, they have their own initiatives. That's not the point. What I'm getting at is there's so much out there that seems to be tied to the paper industry and tied to and it's just like, guys, if we're in the plastic space, we should at least fight back. I would think. I don't know. I digress.
I agree, and they do. Both of the plastic companies I work with, they do have groups within their organization that work with government, and they interact with them on what is needed and what their stance is. And
Right.
and no, they have third party audits that come in and measure their impact and how good a job they do, and they report those. So there's
Right.
some of that, but there needs to be more, right?
Yeah.
Because we still have government officials that don't understand, hey, if something happened to the EVOH supply today,
Yeah.
the main barrier that we use in a lot of our films, we would be
Yep.
in a really bad situation for perishable
Yep.
meats and perishable
Yep.
foods. It's scary that they don't understand that. Coming out of college, I didn't know what EVOH did, but I learned it really quick.
Me either.
Yeah.
Right.
The first time it's missing and you're looking at brown meat, it's pretty easy to figure out what went on.
Big time. Yep. What, in your opinion, and again, this is just, in the EVOH is one piece of that puzzle, but what do we need to do, Tom, to be able to kind of, I mean, man, I don't know whether this is a political action committee or find an influencer or somebody to, I sit here and I think, well, geez, if we had the Kardashians or somebody that just says, out there, or the Taylor Swifts of the world saying plastic is not the scourge of the world, people. And I don't know. I don't know how we kind of even the playing field or level the playing field, but man, something's got to be done. Gravy.
Yeah.
Drives me nuts.
No doubt we need a better voice of how important packaging really is. And maybe it is the wrong approach, but someone with a celebrity type status that speaks up and says, hey, you ever thought about what would be the impact if we didn't have packaging? And
Exactly.
hey, meat's going to ruin in less than a week if we don't have something
Yep.
to protect it. And
Yep.
we have to figure that out. And that's got
Yep.
to come from the plastic industry. That's got to come from the food industry, the meat industry.
Yep. Yep.
There has to be some solidarity to
Yeah.
help our general consumer understand the impact of packaging and how to make those choices.
You nailed it, and that's sort of my pet project too, Tom, is bringing those people together, creating content around those lines of just sharing the message, getting it out there. Hopefully, in time, we'll get more and more people that'll commit to kind of like being part of this voice because it my thing is, and I've been told this by others, that I'm not afraid to tick off the system. I'm not afraid to at least kind of just say this doesn't make sense versus just falling in line. And boy, if we had somebody that could kind of join, and this is kind of why I do this. I
Mhm.
just want to be able to kind of have more and more people just have facts, be able to discuss these facts, be able to make a decision for themselves and not necessarily. I mean, again, where would we be? We're talking food, but where would we be without, fire retardant suits for firemen or Kevlar vests for our police officers are out there? That's
That's
all
right.
plastic related. Nobody wants to go back to, God forbid, using an iron lung at the hospital for Pete's sake. You know what I
That's right.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, where would we be without this? And people are so quick to kind of, oh, so and so said it's bad, but it's not. We just need to do a better job of educating people. So
Yeah.
crazy.
Absolutely. I
Well,
agree.
take us
Yep.
through one of the things that you're proud of, and I'm very, very appreciative of one of these things that you had mentioned here. You were part of this whole flow wrap project at WinPack. Describe that. I've got this on the screen, and I just want to share it with people.
Yeah. So, this is a packaging concept that's been in play in Europe for some time. And no doubt Europe is a different market than the
Yep.
US
Yep.
in their scope and size. And it works very well over there. Obviously, when you move things to the US, things need to flow very fast. They need to run. And so we spent a lot of time trying to decide, can we make a film that will perform under the demands of the US packaging and it be lightweighted, that we reduce packaging format by 60%. And that's exactly
Wow.
what this flow wrap ground beef package does compared to your standard ground beef
Yep.
offerings of tray over wrap or a
Yep.
rigid tray with a lid. So that's
Yep.
what it does. And you still get the same performance. It still runs at the same speed. You get everything that a consumer is looking for is they can see the package, they can see the
Yep.
meat, they can see what's in
Yep.
it. It
Yep.
delivers really high quality graphics. So I feel it's a win. I think this is going to continue to take off. But when you can reduce your packaging weight by 60%, the greenhouse gas emissions by 60%, and not to even mention the impact on logistics, which is
Yep.
probably hard to measure. Our
Yep.
our best guess when I was at WinPack is there was 80% savings on the inbound logistics of the film just coming to the processor. So, less we're shipping less air, it's more of a dense
Yep.
product. And all this package is just a flat film that gets made into a tube and end sealed.
Yep.
And that equipment side of the business is really developed. And now these things can run at 100 a minute. And that's the speed that's really dictated for the ground beef industry.
And I love this because it touches on a couple other really hot buttons that are out there too. We've talked a few times today about lightweighting and reducing how much packaging is being used, whether it's plastic or whatever. That's one thing. But you also mentioned something that I thought was fascinating. I interviewed a guy, actually a company, but a gentleman that started this piece of software. He's in the UK. It's called Benchmark. Benchmark actually is able to, and I'll make the connection with WinPack somewhere down the line, but Benchmark has created software that actually will not only identify and measure the true cost of, let's just say, this flow wrap, but it'll take it from all the from what do you call it, cradle to grave. The amount of
Mhm.
energy it took to make, and the amount of energy it took to ship and store and whatever, including what it replaced, including how it so it basically does this whole kind of a analysis that says to a WinPack, or more importantly, to a company that's buying from WinPack, why they're investing in this. and they go, holy crap, we just made a 34% reduction, or, whatever it is. And to your point, there now are companies that actually, that's all they do is measure this stuff. And to
Mhm.
our broader point, that's what we need to be able to share these success stories and get it out to people so they understand that, wait a minute, a 60% reduction on the material itself, and like you said, the greenhouse gases and carbon footprint and all that other kind of stuff. I mean, goodness gracious, that's not just a single or a double, Tom. That's a home run. Home run.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think those are concepts that the average consumer can understand. Oh, wait,
Right.
I'm using 60% less plastic
Right.
to package the same amount of ground
Right.
beef. Well, I can
Yep.
understand that. And
Yep.
I can understand the greenhouse gas emissions. Even
Yep.
though I may not truly understand the measurement,
Yep.
I can see the impact by me making a choice to buy that product.
I've been recommending to anybody who will listen, and I know you'll appreciate this too. There's so much that we could be doing to educate John Q. public on that kind of thing. We can embed in a QR code, speaking of being printed on your flow wrap, and to be able to kind of educate where this came from, because everybody lives on their phones. Let's face it, everyone's got,
Sure.
and to be
Yeah.
able to kind of, whether they're walking down the aisle or they want to, if we incentivize them to take out their phone and do the QR code and find out what was the evolution of this flow wrap? What was the evolution of this packaging? And one of the things you had mentioned earlier at AC Leg is the fact that, you were using 55-gallon buckets and pails. Now you're using a much thinner material. That's a success story. Those are the
Mhm.
kind of stories that this industry needs more than ever to be able to kind of promote and say, geez, guys, this is not what you think it is. But, we've got to do a better job of capturing this and then promoting it too.
I agree. Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And we don't, because, we often think that we're maybe patting ourselves on the back. And this industry is a very proud industry, but they're very
Yes.
humble too.
Yes.
And
Yep.
so we don't think about that. But a lot of our consumers that are out there, they're looking for those stories. Because let's
You
face
got
it, people do buy, they buy quality and they buy
Yep.
price,
Yep.
but oftentimes they really buy the story behind the product.
And what makes them feel good or bad. But you're right. And there was a gentleman I interviewed on this. I don't know if you had ever crossed paths. His name is Dr. Chris D. Armit. Chris is he's a chemist and a scientist. He's one that kind of really started educating. He was like a one-armed paper hanger on LinkedIn, just trying to, state the facts more along the lines of plastic related, whatever. But he had mentioned several things too, and I tend to agree with it. That's why I wanted to just kind of kickstart this podcast. You said it's a very proud industry, and the plastic industry is. And it's almost like they don't, I might be wrong, but this is my personal opinion. It's almost like, you know what? We're so far above this sort of catfighting thing. We don't even need to do this. We have a product that, yes, we're proud, but we know how good our product is. And I just think if guys like me would get guys like you together and we share the message and start connecting, we would be able to really and truly make a huge dent in the, just educating people and knowing where their packaging is coming from, why it is what it is. And I believe that a lot of the consumers that are out there, Tom, if they realize, here's why we're doing this, because we've reduced it 60% and because it gives us extended shelf life and because, or whatever that is, I mean, people would be so much more in tune without the bashing and the hatred and the nonsense that's out there with some of this crap. Just drives me crazy.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. It is about education. Things are getting better.
Yeah.
We have,
Correct.
we're doing a better job of identifying the packaging that is recyclable, what can
Yep.
be recycled, where to recycle it, where to reuse it, designing packaging that, one of the things that's really cool to me is now we can make film it's a monomer instead of having a laminated structure. Through technology of equipment and extrusion equipment, now we can make monomer packaging that, okay, hey, this is all polyethylene, and this bin says it'll take polyethylene, so I can take this and I can put this in the bin. Okay. But then
Well,
there's a
and
whole story behind that of how it's made. And it
yes,
takes so much less to make polyethylene than it does
yes,
to make other plastics. And
which
so
is
it's a two
100%
component.
recyclable. It's just like, oh, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. Well, it's definitely trending in that direction, Tom, and it's definitely heading there. And I mean, a lot of times it's interesting because I was at the Super Zoo, which is more along the lines of the pet space, and basically talking about it, given a little talk about the mono material that's out there. And everybody tends to, oh, well, our dog food has a heavy fat content. Well, the thing to add to what you were just saying is this material, that mono material, can be made to withstand the heavy fat or oil content.
Mhm.
And
Absolutely.
that to me was one of the biggest drawbacks that people are like, oh, we can't have. We're there. We're there. Now it's an education thing to be able to really get this across the finish line for people to go, holy crap, we actually have something here.
That's right. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I wrapped this up with my buddy Tom Bonner, but let me ask you, and I usually send this to anybody. What would, if you had your magic wand, Tom, and again, whether it's an educational type of thing, whether this is what would Tom Bonner do or recommend if you had that magic wand to influence whether it's the food space or the packaging for food space, anything out there that just comes to mind? There's no right or wrong answer.
Well, I think the biggest thing that if you wanted me to change something would be, hey, ask questions. Don't assume that just because you've been doing it this way for 100 years, that
Yep.
it's the best way.
Yep.
I always use the analogy of mom always cooked the ham in the same pan, and she had to cut the hawk off of the end of it, right?
That's
Well,
right.
when you trace it all back, guess what? Granny didn't have a pot big enough to put the ham in, so we had to cut the hawk
Exactly.
off, right?
Oh,
And there's
I
a
love
lot
it.
of that goes on in this
I know.
industry, whether it's plastic or food.
Yep.
Don't settle for status quo. Ask good
Yep.
questions. Be willing
Yep.
to investigate. Poke your head in some of these and say, hey, I got an idea. I'd really like to try some of this. And just don't be afraid, because we need those individuals that are willing to bring new ideas to this industry. It can't just be the same thing all over and over again.
You know what? And it's so well said too, Tom, because it touches on a lot of that. And, I think about our kids, and, so many kids these days are just afraid to ask questions, whether that mean being criticized or it's the wrong, it looks silly or whatever. What you're saying, and I agree with you 100%, ask questions. That's how we find out what they've tried or what's worked, what hasn't worked, or get people to think, well, yeah, why did Granny cut off the end of the ham? Well,
Yeah.
here's but so often people have just generationally well, that's the way it's always been. So it doesn't have to be like that. Why are we doing this? Why is this? It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and I couldn't agree with you more. Tom, I wanted to thank you very, very much for the record for coming on board. You and I have, it's been great to get to know you and meet you and learn from you. And I want to thank you for joining us today. Thanks.
I've enjoyed it. It's been great, David. Thank you for having me.